Please can you remind me if you'll be so kind, staring out into space, asking God to hear my case, trying to think of all things past. How long will my memory last? The purple angel, purple angel, purple angel, you're next to me.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I am your host and founder of Alzheimer Speaks, Lori La Bey. And for those of you that are new, I welcome you to our show. We really just have a fun time on Alzheimer Speaks Radio, sharing ideas and thoughts and tools and all kinds of stuff to help us learn to live graciously with dementia, because it is a struggle. And I know that my own mother lived with the disease as well as our family and everyone around her for 30 years. And so we understand the range of emotions that people can go through, the isolation, the guilt, the frustration, sometimes even the anger. But there is a whole nother side that brings peace and joy and calm and this elevated, almost spiritual relationship that comes to be. And so that's really what we want to talk about when we are talking with all of our guests. I don't care if they're a researcher or if it's a teenager with an idea or a care partner, a person living with dementia, a business. We have had movie directors and singers and songwriters and authors. So everyone's voice is welcomed here on Alzheimer Speaks, because we truly believe it takes a village. It takes a community to bring hope and give comfort and make people feel welcomed. So while you're listening, I would urge you to go ahead and subscribe, and feel free to like and click and share, because your likes and clicks and shares have really moved Alzheimer Speaks all around the world. And again, we interview people. It doesn't make any difference where they live. We are a sound community of common and unique situations, trying to help one another out. And if you happen to be a business and are looking to expand your brand footprint, reach out to me, because we have all different types of ways that we can help expose the work that you're doing or the products, services, or tools that you have for people living with dementia. And again, for our listeners, I have to say thank you so much. You guys are just incredible, and in this season of being thankful and giving, I can't say thanks enough to each and every one of you. When you click and share one of these episodes, if it's a radio show, a video, a blog, doesn't make any difference. There are people in your own spheres that are dealing with dementia that you probably don't even know. And I'm a firm believer, the more information we can have out and accessible to people, the more comfortable they will feel reaching out and grabbing it when the time is right for them. So before I introduce our guest today, who I'm really excited to talk to, because I think we have very aligned passions when it comes to the dementia movement, I want to give a shout out to a few organizations. The first one, if you are looking for some gift ideas for the holidays, there is a book on the market that is absolutely wonderful, and it's critically important in terms of helping families deal with a dementia diagnosis. It's called Parental Dementia, a guide through all the difficult questions, and it's by Keith Gallus, who has spent more than 20 years helping families work through all of the questions that keep popping up during this dementia journey. The book even has some great worksheets that can help kind of keep you on track and keep you organized. And Keith is also offering a discount if you go to purchase the book at his website, parentaldementia.com, and put in the code Lori, Lori. Again, put in that code Lori, Lori. You'll get $5.99 off your book, which is kind of sweet. Another type of gift that you might want to consider, and this one is a little bit more pricey, but definitely a lot of fun, and you'll be making memories for life, is Lisa Chirico is doing her second annual Alzheimer's and dementia-friendly cruise. And they're going to the tropics. And if you go to alzcruisetropics.com, you can get all the information. alzcruisetropics, and that's plural.com. I did one a couple of years ago, and it was absolutely fabulous. People just had a wonderful time. And it's for people with early to mid dementia and their care partners and or families. We had full families come too, as I believe Lisa has. And it's just a wonderful opportunity, again, to make a great memory. Another organization is the Stall Catchers. Now, Stall Catchers is where we as individual citizens can go and actually help analyze real live Alzheimer's data through playing a video game, and there are people all over the world playing the game. Many of them even have competitions going between one another. They're starting to launch it in schools, in libraries, and so go to stallcatchers.com and check that out. And then last, I'm just going to give a shout out, of course, to the memory cafes, because they're so near and dear to my heart. In the U.S. now we have about 800 of them. And, they're just kind of organic and growing all over the place. But you can go to memorycafedirectory.com, and you can see if there's one in your area, or maybe you are hosting one and you want to get it in the directory. There's absolutely no cost to do that. So please check that out. Again, a memory cafe, if you're not familiar, is for those with early to mid dementia and their care partners. And sometimes, I know in the ones that I do, we allow people with dementia to come on their own because maybe their care partner can't, or maybe they don't have a care partner. And sometimes we have care partners come who maybe the person with dementia isn't ready to come to the group, but they want support. Everyone is different, so just check those out and see what you think. So let's get to the show today, because it's going to be a fun conversation. I am, again, really excited to have Mona Lancaster with us today, and she cared for her mother who was living with dementia. And then when her mother passed away in 2016, she became passionate about making life better for those living with dementia along with their care partners. She believes, like I do, that we need to shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort. And so she is walking her talk, and she's going to share that with us. Mona has her BA in psychology. She is working on a geriatric certificate program through McMaster University, and she has also completed an intensive training through Britain's Dementia Care Matters organization. And that organization is studying the butterfly model, which we've talked about before on this show, and we're going to talk a lot more about it today. So welcome, Mona. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you, Lori?
I am doing fantastic. If you don't mind sharing with us first just a little more background about the journey you had with your own mother. How did you find out, and how long did it go, and maybe a poignant moment for you that was just a turning point.
Well, one of the things I want to share is that initially I started out in university working in long-term care as a nurse's aide, and I always thought long-term care was a viable option for seniors. At that point, we had very little dementia existing, and I think back then we even called it senility. So if you fast forward, my mother had a diagnosis in 2011. And as a sandwich generation, we had 4 teenagers, and we had tried having her with us at home, then a retirement home, and even after that, she had a stroke. We went on to long-term care, and we felt like none of them were really great options. We felt the home environment was too busy, too noisy, and limited exposure to activities for Mom to participate in. I felt retirement homes were a challenging experience. They're a great place socially for cognitively sound seniors. However, I think my mom really found them isolating. And in my experience with seniors without cognitive impairment, they can sometimes even be afraid of people with a dementia diagnosis. But I found that the ratios were very limited in terms of care and support, so Mom was quite alone in that environment. And then Mom ended up in a long-term care after a stroke, which left her with aphasia. And there were many challenges that the care, with the care in particular in a long-term care. All of these experiences, though, it made me think about my initial experience back in university. Like there was almost like an ability to compare and say, wow, things have really shifted, because it just, I had no awareness of the difficulties of care in dementia and what was out there. And so all of these experiences in the three living environments we had were an education, and they were actually a training ground to inspire me to create change. When my mom finally passed, it was 2016.
Okay, wonderful.
Oh, yeah.
Well, thank you for kind of giving us that history. We were talking offline a little bit, and you used the word, that we need to create change through a training ground. What exactly do you mean by that?
Well, the training ground that we really need to educate ourselves more. And I actually remember asking the community care worker at our government health system if there was something like, what I really thought would help my mom was a small home environment, something where she was just with other women like her, and to share this journey. And so I had asked, because I also, in my psychology degree, I knew environmental science really promotes small environments are usually better for many reasons. So I asked her if there was such a thing as a small home environment for women living together with dementia, and she looked at me, the nurse, and this was 2014, and she said, "Wow, you're really ahead of your times." And so that was almost the impetus. It started me thinking that, you know what, why not? It just seems so logical in my mind.
Yeah, that's one thing. We're lucky here in the U.S. We have a lot of small group homes for various people, if it's people with dementia or developmental disabled, or it's a huge concept here in the U.S., especially in Minnesota. But yeah, when you were saying, I told the nurse, and I could just picture her face kind of twisted, going, "What?" Because that seems to be just such a common response when anybody brings a new idea to the table. It's like, well, where'd you come up with that?
And I think it is. It's like this thought that maybe a group home isn't such a great idea. We just seem to have a stigma about that, and yet to me it's a much more effective way of living in community than in a large institutional setting.
Yeah, it's more normal, it's natural, and it allows people to be, if they're an extrovert or introvert, kind of mold in a little bit easier, I think, too. Sometimes I think in large communities, they're busy just to be busy, but it's not necessarily offering anything particular for soul value. And I think that there's a huge difference there. We get so task-oriented. And I think families can get really task-oriented as well. But I think it's something, communities don't want to get tags or flags or whatever you want to call them from their health departments and their, the people who are doing the surveys and things. And sometimes we get disconnected with that basic relationship of, that you have with people. So real important. What did you find out about small home environments for people with dementia? Who inspired you, and what did you see?
Well, I started to do my research, and I found out that the European countries where the demographic shift had already happened 20 years ago, the shift where the age of 65, the population was greater than that of under the age of 12, that happened 20 years ago. And so they had their crises back then and had to figure out solutions. And I noticed that there were some housing, small home environments that they promoted online. And so I know that Denmark was well known for that, and Germany. And the one that really stuck with me was Germany. There's a gentleman out of Berlin named Klaus Paletko, and he's in charge of a program called Friends of the Elderly, and he has helped initiate 3,500 of these houses throughout Germany, and I think 600 of them are in Berlin, and Berlin is about the same population as Toronto. But he's been doing this for 20 years. They're tried and tested. The common theme is relationships and purposeful living that you spoke of earlier, and they seem to happen better in a small relationship. The premise of a social model of care is there. As a matter of fact, what was interesting, because so many of us have heard about the Dementia Village out of the Netherlands, everybody's saying it's such a wonderful, effective way of living, and it's not necessarily the village that's effective, but what we're learning is that within that village, they house people in small apartments. So they have an apartment that might be a home for 6 to 8 people, and what they do is they house them according to common themes. So one apartment might consist of men who were businessmen during their working years, or another house might be full of women who are artists. And so the success, and it was pointed out to me by a professor who studied person-centered care, isn't necessarily in the village. The village gives some purpose, but really and truly the connection is in the small living environment that they go back to. So we at Memory Lane sought out a social model of care, as I said, in Germany, and we found that what was the success in their particular model is that it was a cooperative form of living. So the families and the people living in the house had a say in how they lived each day, the care service, what activities were going to take place. It gave the people a feeling, I think, of control. As a cooperative model, we know that it usually allows a higher level of control for the end users. And there's a gentleman in Canada by the name of John Restakis. Now, he's a Canadian, and he is world-renowned advocate for cooperatives, but he's been advocating for a national task force on cooperative elder care for years. And what he's suggesting, actually, is that the caregiver be just only a stakeholder with limited investment rather than being in charge. Because that might take away from the whole sense of feeling that you're in control. But he points out with limited resources in Europe, they're actually starting to do that, where the families kind of run the co-housing. The government might put in a small portion of funding, but it's, they're just a stakeholder, a part of it, not completely in charge. So that was what we felt it just appealed to us, the success of not being completely government run, but having a government footprint in it, perhaps.
Okay. Wonderful. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your housing model in particular, and kind of the butterfly model, the respite program, and then you also do some ecotherapy, which some people might not know about. So maybe tell us about the design and how it's laid out, and then the programming piece on top of that.
So what we did was our primary purpose, first of all, is to give caregivers and loved ones the opportunity to live well with dementia. So from the get-go, the house isn't a locked-up facility. It's a natural home that you and I would live with, bungalow, where we have bedrooms that are all on sort of one level for them to live in. We have some bedrooms downstairs as well. We've created actually an intergenerational component. We have some students that are in the healthcare faculty over at a nearby college that are renting the downstairs at a minimal charge. And we've kind of designed the house so it's very open spaced, and we have a walk around the house in particular that's promotes, we call that ecotherapy, getting outside for walks. it's a simple concept. I mean, we do it with the young kids. You see people outside in daycares, but we never see adults, seniors outside. And so that was the beginning promotion of let's get people outside as much as possible, because it's as important to somebody as an older adult as it is to a young person. But the idea of our home is that we actually had a 5-month rental earlier in the year to a woman who was doing a renovation in her facility, and we had 5 women housed here quite satisfactorily. Like, everybody was happy. There was a small environment, and they could sort of participate and help out where they wanted. So what we've done is we've really focused on the emotional part of the journey. And last year we engaged in Dementia Care Matters to take some intensive training. And really it's about learning the social and emotional journey to create a culture that promotes quality of life versus quality of service. And that's what we really look for in the house. It's perhaps, I would think, the opposite of what we encounter in care homes, because sometimes we see homes that are pristine, clean, and sterile, but the residents sit there in idle moments. So Dementia Care Matters, with their butterfly model of care, supports, I believe people are familiar maybe with the Tom Kitwood personhood theory that states people living with dementia have basic psychological needs, and they're probably the needs of everybody, but he's pointed out that even in dementia you have these needs, which are love, identity, comfort, inclusion, attachment, and occupation. And we believe that engaging people in the running of the house, so to speak, promotes all of this. And so we've started programming in the house. We were actually outside in the community, and we brought our programming into the house this year and found that it was just a much more comfortable environment. We still keep it small, but people join us for activities, and then they help participate in a lunch to end the event with. And usually that lunch, everybody helps to participate. Everybody, the caregivers, the loved ones with a dementia diagnosis, they all help out wherever they can, and we love it. It's like eating in community. And I noticed that that was something that's promoted in the Dementia Matters, Dementia Care Matters, is eating at a table together and letting everybody have a purpose, whether it's doing the dishes or sweeping the floor and connecting. And I noticed that after a lunch we'll have caregivers talking to caregivers. We'll go for a walk with some of the people that are living with their dementia diagnosis outside. Everybody it's just like a house. And it's simple. It's living, life I would call it normally. So I believe that the other thing that we really promote is education. And so usually we host annually a conference, and we're having something come up in January 17th where we've invited an investigative reporter who studied in depth the Dementia Care Matters and the butterfly model of care that came about in Peel Region, which is in Ontario. And so that's an opportunity for us to educate the community at large, the caregivers, the healthcare professionals even, and just the more education, as you said earlier, I think the better we are to prepared as caregivers and just as a community to deal with this dementia onset. So, yeah, we're quite impressed with the success. We've now started doing Respite as well, and within the Respite care, we find that people can bring their services into the house. So if somebody's having Respite for 4 or 5 days and they have somebody who does exercise with them, they bring that into the house. The parents help us, the caregivers, whether it's a parent or a child, will decide on what their loved one would do, and sort of with their blessing and what it's quite a natural process. Structure, we do things as we see the loved one wants to do things. We're not, we will encourage things that kind of make them happy. We try and connect with them emotionally. So the nice thing about our respite is people come here already. The caregiver and the loved one come to our programs. And so, to bring somebody into respite after that, it's a familiar environment. They know us. They know the home. And it's a smooth transition, and we think that's part of the success. So, yeah. And that's it. That would be what I would have to say. Our ultimate goal is to have a home that would permanently house a cooperative environment. And so we're sort of work in progress right now, but we thought we would continue with this respite care, and eventually we'll move on into something. Ideally, what we'd love to see is this cooperative model replicated. So we could have, right now we have our house services 5 women, but down the road we'd like to see maybe a green care house, a green care type of farmhouse for men who love to be outside and doing things. So we'll see where we end up on this journey.
Yeah, and there are the day program models where they're farms, which I just find fascinating. That's what they use over in Europe, versus what we have here. So it is interesting how everybody does it. Just a little bit different than one another. What have you found in terms of families' response to respite? I find here in the States that they don't really even know what it means.
Well, we did, I guess respite is kind of in the eyes of the beholder, but I know the Alzheimer's Society in York Region came together with a dementia care strategy, and one of the highlights was they needed more respite for the loved one with a dementia diagnosis, and I see that. I think that's an important component, but I also feel like respite for the caregiver and loved one. One of the reasons we have our programs together is to create a form of respite for the caregiver as well. It's really important for them to stay connected with other people on this journey, and so when they come, they sort of see how much value there is. They start, like I said, they share and have conversations and connections with other caregivers, not only with caregivers, but with also the loved ones of other people here. But so for them, sometimes respite might just be getting out of the house with other people. I mean, it's a form of respite just to be in an area of support. Day programs are another form of respite, and I think the government really does promote that kind of respite where you're just sending your loved one off every day to a program. And some caregivers need that. What we are offering up, and that's a little different, is hassle-free overnight respite if they need it. So, we had somebody last week who had to go to Ottawa, and there's no way Mom could have stayed at home with the son and his family because there was just too much going on. So she came to our program and stayed after, and you know what, the transition was smooth. And I can imagine sometimes it's not because, in this journey of dementia, there's a lot of fear and anxiety for people with the dementia symptoms, and they can escalate when there's just more of the unknown. I mean, they're already struggling with their diminishing cognitive skills, and they know that. And so you put something else that's really unfamiliar in front of them, and the fear just escalates. And what we really want to try and do is, create a relationship with them that promotes trust so that we can reach them. It's kind of like it's an emotional currency to get them to work cognitively, if I can say that.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think it's just so very important. Can you explain a little bit more about the ecotherapy?
Well, the ecotherapy is just there's studies that have shown you being outside does things to help promote your well-being, and they actually did some studies, and I know we did this when we started out. We were looking at that ecotherapy. They actually, in the final stage or our last season of life, it's really an important component. And I don't know about you, but I know with my mom, one of the things she just loved doing was going out for walks and seeing trees and birds and nature. And we are surrounded by it. One of the women last week who was on Respite said something about, oh, I can see the birds outside. It's just was so enlightening for her. But the idea is to be outside. And I know that on my mom's darkest moments, I would take her for a walk, and we would just go and sing songs and just enjoy the moment, just being in the moment. And really, I think that's what ecotherapy does. You look around and you see everything, and it's richer, it's more beautiful. There's something about it, and people find it very calming in, this season of their life for sure.
Well, and I think it's just something too, kind of brings us back to that norm of this is something that pretty much everybody enjoys, and it doesn't focus on, I have an illness. It doesn't focus, it just kind of takes you away and just allows you to look at the simple beauties of life, and to me, that's really what Dementia is here to teach us, to get back.
Well, the one of the things with sundowners is that it's sort of like if you've ever raised little kids, they have that, we call it that witching hour at about 4:00 when things, if they haven't been outside and they haven't had their exercise and their fresh air, it can be a tough time. And we find that what they're saying in long-term care homes is that there's this thing called sundowners, and really what you want to do is get people outside and kind of eliminate this hour so that they are, refreshed, but they're tired and they're ready to go to bed after supper or whatever, whenever they, they need the exercise and the fresh air. It's just, it's part of a basic need in life.
Yeah, it really, it just kind of rejuvenates you and is very important. What are some of the biggest challenges that you have had at Memory Lane, home living?
Well, I think one of our greatest challenges is that the government's lack of support in a new housing environment. They are not ready to look at small home environments at this point. They struggle with change, and that's pretty common anywhere. And they see, I guess what we see is the governments have been trained to look at economies of scale with large institutional settings. And what we find is that it's sort of somewhat of an oxymoron in that there are many inefficiencies in an institutional setting, especially in the care of dementia. But it's a challenge for the government to look outside their box, and it might partly be because they've been so trained and ingrained about having a medical model of care, and they see that in a large setting. So, yeah. I would suggest that over the next 10 years we will start to see a shift, because in Canada at least we are, starting to, we're starting to run out of long-term care homes, and retirement homes are filling up, and there's a lot of chaos. So I think they're going to start to look at things in a different light, but change is slow.
Change is slow. And that can be a good thing sometimes too, because going too fast can get really frustrating for everyone too. But I know sometimes I have to work on my patience.
But even in the long-term care, I think I mentioned to you earlier that, with the butterfly model of care and the Dementia Care Matters, one of their theories is within a large institution, create small home settings, particularly in dementia, and keep people that are in different stages in different areas. And we don't see that. We have these large units with lockdown, and they're all, I hate to use the word clumped together, but and that's not always helpful. I think people need to be with people that they have something in common with, and if it's even just a language or it's the stage of dementia you're in, There's all kinds of reasons to maybe make smaller environments and make them home-like and cozy. There's a lot they could do in the institutions, and so maybe that's where we'll see the transition initially. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that could be. What are some of your favorite components of the butterfly model, and how have you seen families react to it, as well as residents?
Well, I like the idea of them. It used to be, like I said, the person-centered care theme before the butterfly model was just, about sort of meeting the person on their terms, not on the terms of the institution. But the butterfly adds a little bit more and says, hey, wait a minute, it's not just about that. It's also about having a relationship with these people. So I love the idea of being with these people rather than doing, and also having the other theme I like is that it's a cultural change. So it's not just the frontline PSW that has to change her process of how she works with the residents. It's more of everybody's involved in this. Everybody learns this culture and promotes it. As a matter of fact, they're saying that a long-term care home facility could nicely implement a butterfly model of care, but you have to take all of the staff, and they all have to be butterfly trained to learn about how to connect emotionally with another human being. And sometimes it's looking at yourself and being vulnerable enough to have that relationship. So, for instance, it's not a one-sided relationship where you know everything about the resident or the person that has the dementia. It's about sharing some of you with them as well, being vulnerable enough to open yourself up in a retirement home or long-term care. And that we start to see in the workplace and a lot, and not just in care facilities and in healthcare. It can be everywhere where people are very departmentalized. Well, I'm this person at work and I'm this person at home. And the idea is what a different environment we would create if we create a home-like environment in our workplace. We're willing to share a bit of ourselves. We're willing to take time to have the relationships. And I think it makes so much sense. That's one of my favorite components is just understanding how to bring people together, and it's not just a one-sided relationship. But the other thing I was thinking of was, when we went into the training, they really emphasized to take a look at the difference between getting rid of the controls in an organization. So, they had us compare. Our first day in training was to compare jails to hospitals to long-term care, and simple controls like wearing uniforms and eating separately from the people that you're serving, and levels of authority. They're just everybody sort of treats everybody equally, at least in the treatment of people, which is the golden rule: treat everybody with respect.
Yep, exactly. It is such a, to me, it's such a basic need and want from everybody, and I don't know why it's overlooked in the care industry in terms of, giving somebody that safe, comfortable environment where they feel welcomed and they feel appreciated, because it's a basic need everybody has, and yet. And to me, it needs to be, really the primary and the core of the care model. And yet we don't have that. And I think we got lost because we have all these tasks that we're doing, and we look at those tasks and we think, well, it's all for them, so that is our core model. But again, we forgot about the relationship piece and how we're truly making people feel. And, when I watch some of the, various butterfly videos and things, they just say it's like night and day. It's like someone just turned on the lights and everything changed.
And it's also educating them, I suspect, because I know that retirement homes and long-term cares don't necessarily educate the family. And so the decision makers, and especially the adult children, when they're making a decision for their loved one with a dementia diagnosis, they may not understand the journey well, and so they they don't really know what their needs are. And I had a conversation with a nurse out of Ottawa, and she felt that too many people were drinking the Kool-Aid and had been, and I kind of laughed because she said, well, they're all convinced that it's the medical model of care is what works, and that they need a lockdown unit, and it's sort of the opposite of what they need. They don't need the controls. They need the care and the love. So if we could educate the caregivers and the adult children to look at, a more of a butterfly model, I think that will go a long way. But we're still kind of in the infancy of that. We struggle, and people are busy. And I know that it's funny because sometimes I wonder if my mom had cancer, or if an adult child had a parent with cancer, if they put more energy into figuring out solutions. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if we would treat it differently, and it's an unanswered question for me right now.
Yeah, and I think it's even outside healthcare, when I just look at society as a whole, we are not very kind to people anymore. I mean, we've gotten really fast-paced and downright brutal at points, and we don't always think before we talk. We're not concerned or give any thought to how what we say or do might affect somebody, and and that really stands out super loudly in a healthcare model when you've got vulnerable people, and it needs to change. I like one of the things I teach when I go around and speak is I really believe dementia is here to teach us to be better people. Period. Because to me, everything that we learn that is good for dementia is good for all of our life and all of our interactions. And it can make our lives much richer to slow down and be more present and get more out of our relationships. They're there, and sometimes we just kind of float right past them because we're too busy being busy.
Absolutely, for sure.
And they talk with the age of technology that the pace isn't going to slow down on its own. So it's really up to us. And I'm horrible. I still have my phone on my bedside, and I'm checking stuff and doing this and doing that. And so you don't have that downtime. And, one of the gifts for me with my mom was I always tell people she was like the safest place for me to visit because she didn't judge anymore. Her ego had kind of left the building, and she wasn't about that as the disease progressed. And she was like the most gracious, loving person. And I could just be whoever I was. I didn't have to hide it. I didn't have to put on a Stepford, wife smile and pretend everything's okay. Because that confuses them too when we try to pretend it's okay because they're reading all of our other nonverbals and things. And so I think they just get us much more in tune to the reality of how we communicate. And it's much more than just words. And yet that's where most of the emphasis is put on, is our verbiage with that. Do you do much in terms of training your staff? Do you do anything, differently? I know when I watched the one of the butterfly videos, they talked about they don't do specific dementia staff training. Instead, they do vulnerability training where the staff actually have to open up about their own vulnerabilities in order to have an appreciation for what they call their family members or residents are going through. And
well, most of our volunteers, for instance, they are people that were caregivers themselves, and they're all just kind of they're very extremely vulnerable. They've been there, and it's just wonderful to have had that experience and to be open up and even just to still express their loss and be okay with it. And I find that we're seeing that it's about being vulnerable, and because we're small, we find that we don't have that large, pretentious work environment. Trust me, it's pretty on the other end of the scale for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we have regular meetings where we sit and chat. I mean, it's not a training per se, as you would say. We send things to each other and we talk about them, but we have regular meetings where we just sit and share things that have come up or, what we're feeling, and we're there sort of to support each other. So it's a different environment. And I have never had an environment like this. Like I said, usually in work environments, it's survival of the fittest. Yep. This is just such a different journey, and I love it. It's got its challenges, but I will say that I really feel like I'm exactly where I need to be.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Anything else, that you wanted to cover that we haven't so far yet?
No, I think we've covered a lot of ground today, Lori.
Okay.
I just, as you said, really encourage people to teach us how to be, this journey does teach us how to be better people and to open our hearts up. And I would just ask everybody to think long and hard about, slowing down and let's get out there to see what we can do to make the world a better place. It's up to us.
Yeah. Exactly. Do you want to share specifics of what your address is, too, so people know where you're located?
Well, we're in Richmond Hill in Ontario, and we're kind of in the center of Richmond Hill, which is York Region, Yonge at Major Mac. And if they want to reach us, I think our phone number here is 905-237-1419. And you can also just go on the website. Our website is memorylanehomeliving.ca.
Okay. And you also have a Facebook page and a Twitter account as well.
Yeah, they're all on our website. So if you just go in there, you can click on to everything. So.
Okay, great. Yeah, that makes it nice and easy. And, if you're just on Facebook right now while you're listening, it's Memory Lane Home Living. And on Twitter, it's at Memory Lane HL. And, well, Mona, this has been a really interesting conversation, and I so thank you for taking the time to be with us today and sharing the work that you're doing. I think it's fascinating and will help so many people. I wish you the best.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Lori.
Great. Thank you. In wrapping up, I just again want to say thank you to everybody and would encourage you to subscribe. Just click that button and you will be notified each time there's an episode. We usually do a couple a week. And don't forget to click, and share, on your Facebook, your Twitter, your LinkedIn, or there's so many social media accounts out there. I can't even tell you how many there are, because I really think that we can get ahead of this disease and win this battle against dementia by building a sense of community and collaboration and comfort by just sharing what each of us knows. And don't forget to check out that book by Keith Gallus called Parental Dementia, a guide through all of the difficult questions. And you can go to parentaldementia.com. And the code to get that discount of $5.99 is Lori, Lori. And as always, please visit alzheimersspeaks.com. There you can get to the radio show, the blog. You can see the videos we facilitate with those living with dementia called Dementia Chats. We also have a whole page of various projects and initiatives if you're interested in becoming dementia friendly or part of the Purple Angel Project, and so much more. So have a wonderful week, and we will talk to y'all soon. Thanks, Dal. Bye.
Hi, everyone. This is Meredith from the Senior Fitness with Meredith podcast, where I discuss all things for seniors, from fitness, your health and wellness journeys, how to be all over strong and beyond. I also have my mini podcast called Motivation with Meredith. It's a great, quick motivational pick-me-up for your days. Join me, listen now, search for Senior Fitness with Meredith on your favorite podcast platform.